Hello my dears and welcome back to the ration book. First off, I apologise I've been away. I didn't even have any plans to be away, but it's just what's happened in life. Those of you who have been around for a while will know that it's just my bag, you know, I come and I go, I come and I go. Can't keep it all going all at the same time. So my apologies, but here I am. We'll get the first negative out the way. It's the only negative really. Everything else is fantastic. Life is generally pretty good. More tests at the hospital. Results tomorrow. There's nothing to talk about because I don't know anything. That's the worst, isn't it? When you've got the anxiety, you just don't know. When you know what you're dealing with, you can create a battle plan. You know, you can muster the energy, the courage, the whatever you need, you know, to just crack on and just, when you know what you're dealing with. I just don't want to be cut open again. I just don't want to go down that road. You know, it takes a lot of energy to worry about things, but of course you're anxious, of course you are. But we don't worry about things until we worry about them, because otherwise you just have to worry twice. It takes a lot of energy, you know. Other than that, so the last time we had a chat, get yourselves a cup of tea, chaps. Get yourself a brew. Chill out, relax. This is a long overdue catch up. Hey, remember to mention it this time. So what are we now? Middle of October, 6 weeks. Because it was the end of August, wasn't it? Beginning of September. I went to the Cosby Victory Show, which is a kind of like a local 1940s thing. That probably was not the greatest of ideas, because traipsing around on a Sunday in the blazing hot sun when you're not feeling fabulous, the next day I was rough. Oh my gosh, I was bad. Do you remember I put on the community feed that I wasn't feeling great? So I did the whole towel over the bowl thing, steam. Thank you very much for that. Trying to nip it in the bud. And I did for the most part. The actual show, it has lots of reenactors, and they do this 10-15 minute battle, and they basically blow up the field, you know? And there's explosions of bombs and tanks and soldiers and nurses and all sorts. And then there's we have a 2-minute silence with your bugle call. And there was one little boy, and he was asking his dad, like, why are we doing a silence? Why are we doing a silence? Because this isn't the 11th of November, you know. So I sort of explained to him, you know, well, it's because you've just watched this. It's not for entertainment. It's for us to remember, you know. It was to mark of respect for the fact that this has happened and sadly is happening. Moving on from that. Oh, the cat's back, just so you know. Hey, Mills. Moving on to the house news. Oh, God. Right. The chain as it stands is first time buyer purchasing a London house. London house is buying mother's buyer, and then mum's buyer is buying mum's. And then mum's buying mine. This first house in London, this solicitor who was dealing with it either walked away, got sacked, whatever, but they withheld the paperwork. The lady solicitor who came in and took over, she rifled through the paperwork and discovered that the poor girl who's selling the property, no one has put her name on the title deeds at the land registry. So she doesn't legally own the property. The solicitors, the estate agents, we've never come across this before. I don't know how long this is going to take. It could take months. You're thinking, oh my God. So with that thought in mind, it was like, right, do you know what? I'm quitting my job. So I've quit. I've quit. It's a job, you know. It's something to do and it pays the bills. I did it because I wanted to get my body stronger, and I wasn't going to do that by being on the sofa knitting, as beautiful as that would have been, it's not going to happen. And then once I was strong, we were in the process of moving house and stuff like that. So it was like, okay, well, maybe I might need a mortgage. I'll continue on with this job. But now, when it came to my last shift, the entire place got flooded. I spent about 5.5, 6 hours in my wellies with a mop in my hand. I finished my last shift, and then I got home and I decided to treat myself. I bought myself a National Trust membership because I did a couple of shifts more than what I was expecting to have to do. I thought I'll use that money and I'll treat myself to National Trust. So yes, I've been to a few places. The Wimpole estate, absolutely beautiful. I could move in tomorrow, seriously. It was exquisite, perfectly balanced. She's used blue and pink a lot, very Raphaelite, blue and pink has been used a lot throughout the house in all its varying shades. Absolutely gorgeous. Her name was Elsie Banbridge, and she was the only surviving daughter of Rudyard Kipling. Have I got that name right? Hopefully. She didn't have any children. Sadly, her husband passed away quite young. So she never remarried. She just had, friends, basically, companions. And then that's how it's been gifted to the National Trust for us all to enjoy. So that was nice. Oh my God, the library. Oh God. I could just put my camp bed there. That's it, I'm done. I've moved in. It doesn't matter about the rest of the house, but the library, oh my goodness me, it was gorgeous. And all the cupboards, it was A, B, C, it was all labelled, and you think to yourself, no one can possibly get through all these books. Nobody can read them all, but they're for reference mainly, aren't they? But wow, to have something like that, amazing. Just to be able to wander down, if they all fancy reading a story, even downstairs, so the upstairs, downstairs, it's so like Downton Abbey, but even downstairs was beautifully, I'm not going to say exquisitely, that's upstairs, but beautifully decorated, really tasteful, perfect. Oh yeah, I booked myself onto a Haven holiday. So you can get these £49 caravan holidays. I went to Essex. I never knew what to expect from Essex because I've never been. It was actually quite surprising how very similar to Lincolnshire it was. Because with it being so close to London, I was expecting it to be, well, non-rural. But no, it was very Lincolnshire-y. It was nice to see the sea, smell the sea, it was lovely. Have a wander on the beach, and while I was there, they've got this aviation museum which they have made out of a Napoleonic tower. So 1806 it was built. They built 26 of them up and down the country. This was letter A, it was the very first one. It goes A to Z. And then during the Second World War, this fighter pilot chap by the name of King, he ended up sort of nosediving just off of the beach, in the sea. And he managed to get out, and he, being a very strong swimmer, he swam sort of to shore, but at that time there was all the barbed wire. So he couldn't get over the barbed wire. It took 20 minutes for the search and rescue team to get to him, but it was November. Blooming cold, and the poor chap died of hypothermia. Now, normally, especially like with this channel, we're dealing with the more homely aspects of the war. It's a very rare occasion when a normal civvy will get to see the remnants of the more brutal aspects of war. And to see his aeroplane there, with its bent propellers and its bullet holes in the engine, where the engine is, and its bits ripped away from it, and how primitive in a way. I mean, there was certainly no comforts within the cab, you know, where he's doing all his piloting, and how big the pedals were and how big the pilot's boots are, and just things like that. I mean, you see all these things in pictures, but to see them in real life there, it's a bit, harrowing, yeah. It's unusual. We don't see these things. We know of them, but again, when we go to these victory shows, the Spitfires, they've been refurbished. They are at their best. They're at their glory. You know, you don't see battered stuff that's been ripped and shot at, and you know, you don't see the bad. Yeah, bit strange, bit eerie. Bit eerie. And the rest of it, some of the stuff in that place was amazing. You know, they've got an original swastika flag that some chap had pinched off of a boat. There were letters to mothers about their sons, where they're at, you know, from the Ministry of Information. You've got some Japanese things, because there were Japanese prisoners of war here, and their ladyfolk, their beloveds, had made them lucky belts to wear underneath their uniforms. And there was things like coupons. The servicemen and women, you know, they didn't necessarily have money, they had coupons, they had vouchers. And the Japanese had that as well. The Japanese had some vouchers to the worth of, but not actual money. And I wonder if pretty much every country probably did that in order to maintain a stable economy. It was really fascinating. It's definitely worth it. If you are down in Essex, you are staying there, you do go to the Aviation Museum, it's definitely worth a look. There's lots of really fascinating little bits of information that I didn't know, I'd never seen, so that was really good. But yeah, so anyway, so that's what I've been up to. I've been on my holidays, I've quit my job, been out doing a bit of gardening, and that leads us on to the first knit. So here's my knitting bag of goodies. So I went to put my wellies on and realised that I haven't actually knit myself any welly socks, which is silly. I've made my first pair of Land Girl stockings according to the... And look how big they are. That's how big they are. According to the 1942 leaflet. Now, I thought I'd made a mistake. I really did. When it just carried on knitting and carried on, I thought, seriously, this cannot be. But it's because when you actually put them on, it is right. It is right. You think you've got it wrong, but you haven't. This rib turns over. So it's just that extra bit of security for keeping up your stocking. You might need, is it a garter or something, to hold your stocking up. But you got to think this bit goes over where your breeks come down to here. So then this bit sort of goes over there and it all holds together. And then what I've done is, they're quite Halloween-y colours, aren't they? It just happens that that's what I had. So, yeah, so I've used, you can get this thing called sock thread, which is invisible. However, we're making do with what I've got in. So I've got this like shiny, glittery sort of thread, metallic thread. So I've used that just as an extra bit of strengthen, because when it comes to my socks, they give way mainly here. So there's the toe, there's the heel. They give way here and they give way on the heel. So I could theoretically, as well, this is shown in the Make, Do and Mend book, if you take it inside out, where all the garter's running along, you can sort of reinforce that before you even make a hole. That's not a bad shout, so I probably will do that. But I thought I'd use this thread just as an extra, especially because it's been ripped. God knows how many, 3 or 4 times this yarn's been worked. So, I mean, it's not fabulous. So I thought I'd use that to strengthen it. And then this orange yarn is just that bit thicker, so it's a bit tougher. So I've used that, and I wanted to use that up, and I have, which is why we've got the odd. So I went through my my scraps bit of yarn, and I found the tiniest little ball of sort of off cream or whatever it is. I thought, yeah, nice and thick, you'll do. But that's what I mean. It's like you save every last scrap, whether it's for something as simple as this, whether it's for using it with a little bit of Fair Isle, as a row of Fair Isle, or maybe just the odd design pop here or there, or for mending. For when you do get a hole, you've still got some matching yarn left to fix your hole, or to, you know, thread up if your stitching up has come undone. So that's what I've learnt from the Make Do Amend book. I've been busy reading other things, but we'll get more onto that in a minute. But yeah, so there's my first knit of the month. Then I have got on my needles. This is I've just started, and I've got this as a contrast, so it's sort of stripy and plain. Retro Claw spoke about this a couple of videos or so ago, where you can have warm tones and cold tones, and this is cold, so it's kind of finding the right thing to go with that. It'll do. I think I can eke it out. So this is going to be out of my new knitting book. Da, 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 da. It's going to be what they've called a stocking cap. However, I mean, I've got one or two sort of patterns for jelly caps. I call them jelly caps. But yes, a stocking cap. I thought, yeah, that'll do. That'll do. Let's hope that there's enough here to make that. I think Charles Dickens, I think the Christmas Carol, is it the 1980s version where he's got his stocking cap on, his jelly cap? Yeah, that's what I think. I think that's definitely a rollover into this era, but it's not rolled into beyond, really. I think up to the 40s you had the jelly cap, and then that was it. It kind of finished. I haven't really seen anything 50s onwards for it, so I thought, such an old style, of course it's got to be done, you know, come on. Now, I've gone through my wardrobe. I have got plenty of tops. Yeah, of course, I'd love a few more slipovers. Definitely a bit of Fair Isle action going on at some point, but it's not a desperate need. What is a need is bottoms. I've got plenty of frocks that I never wear. I break them out every so often. And yeah, plenty of tops, but it's bottoms. I've always struggled for bottoms, even as a, you know, nipper. I'm making a 1971 skirt. I've gone through and picked out all of my bottom patterns. I've got plenty of skirts. I've got a pair of trousers, and there's also a pair of knickerbockers. So I thought I'd start with this skirt and see how we get on. It's this one here. In tweed, they've knit it, but that's what I'm having a go at. So I'm going to see how a knitted item feels, if it's really comfortable. One in every colour. It's the same as this. It's, you know, it's ripped yarn, and that's where I've got to so far. And I think it'll be really comfortable when it's done. But it's very almost mechanical work. Quite, you know, if you like intricate things, you're going to get really bored. You know, if you've got one of them knitting machines, you could whiz it up, no problem. But yeah, I'm doing it hand knit when there's not a lot of brain juice needed, you know. So that's that. Oh, look! Oh, I forgot I had these. Look! Oh, it's true. I haven't emptied the bag since I went on holiday. Look, I've got my shells. Always have to bring back some shells from the beach, always. But yeah, oh, I just thought they were pretty. Are they oyster shells? Yeah, bit of a mix. But yeah, I don't know what I'll do with them, but I just like to bring back shells when I've been on my holidays. Souvenir. Right, so let's put that knitting away. So that's what's on the needles currently. Useful things. Nothing too indulgent there. Right, so now I went to Cork Abbey, which is a National Trust property. It's kind of like a dilapidated country house, like fallen on hard times, but it's being maintained that way. I bought this for 50p from the bargain box, and it's War Wives, and it's got countless pages of women all across Europe. So it's not British, it's not just what it's all over, and it's their recollections, their stories, brief stories, but their stories of their life during the war, what was most poignant to them, really. And they all have different slants. Some talk about the rationing, some talk about their men, some talk about their children, others talk about their jobs, you know, I mean, loads of aspects. So yes, and you have all pictures for them, you know, which is rather nice. This amazing woman here, just from reading the few pages about her and how she's written stuff, wow. I mean, she was crushed under a building that fell down on her with mangled hips and a duffed spine. She carried on and she kept the family going, and there was no complaints, there was no, you know, woe is me. She just buckled down, got on with it, same as her son. I mean, what he went through, my God, you wouldn't wish it on anybody. Never complained, was always grateful for whatever help they could get. How amazing. And her name, I'm going to say her name because wow, and I hope it's the right story. I think it is. Yeah, Elizabeth Smith from Sunderland, Tyne and Wear. Elizabeth suffered as much as any woman in the war, experiencing her home bombed to the ground around her, her husband and sister-in-law killed in the incident, and her only son so badly mutilated that he had to undergo years of plastic surgery. And her quote is, "God makes the back to carry the burden." Having bought that and just reading Elizabeth's story, and then a few of the other women as well, kind of got me into about diaries, recollections, memoirs. And then I found this diary by Margaret Foster. Now, I haven't even read this one yet. Margaret Foster is the author. She's compiled people's stories and made books out of them. This is the book about Millie King. And she was born 1901. She started writing her diary at age 13, so that's 1914. That was when her brother went to war, the Great War. And she finished in 1995, I believe. It takes you basically sort of through, dipping in and out of her diary and what Margaret has pulled together. Yeah, Margaret has pulled together for a story to tell you, basically. And in 1939, New Year's Eve, Millicent was pregnant with her first child, and her husband, I mean, life was going to, 39 was going to be amazing. It was going to be the year. And within that year, she sadly had an accident. She lost her son, and war was declared. Talk about a turnaround. Craziness. And the war actually plucked her out of her reverie, basically, her grief, you know. She didn't cry. You didn't cry in public. And she's got another diary entry in 84 where someone has put an exhibition together, and it was actually involved someone that she knew, Tilda. Seeing the photos, seeing the quotes and everything, she just broke down in tears in the middle of, you know, in public, surrounded by people, You know, and she felt so embarrassed, but she just simply couldn't stop it. And it shows you the horror that people have, you know, go through and then carry from the war, that they probably don't even realise they're carrying as much as they are, you know. But yeah, she felt so embarrassed, but she just couldn't stop the tears. Absolutely, you know. And that was 40 years on from it finishing. What's happened to you in younger life, it carries with you, because she's gone through two world wars, you know, poor girl. And this diary was never written for people to see. It really is a personal diary. Whereas this one, which I then sought out because I saw it in a book, this was written to be read, because the Vera Hodgson was writing what she was going through to send off in letters to her cousin who lived abroad. This one is few eggs and no oranges. I'm only a little bit of the way in, as you can see, but so far she talks a lot about what has been happening amongst the military, and she also talks about how 3 Scotsmen who were captured by the Germans, they must have been in their civvies, because your uniform would give you away, wouldn't it? But they started talking Gaelic, and the Germans brought in 5 different interpreters to work out who are they, you know, and they couldn't work it out. So eventually, because they didn't know Gaelic at all, so the Germans brought in a map, and they were like, sort of, point to where you're from, sort of thing. So they pointed at North Russia. And they went, oh, fine, let them go. I don't know the ins and outs, because Russia was against Germany, wasn't it? I don't know, but they pointed somewhere and they were freed because they were talking Gaelic, these Scots. You think, oh my God, they must have been having a right little laugh between the 3 of them, I tell you. So far, I'm up to, where am I up to? October 1940, so she's a London girl. She's going through the Blitz. You pray to see the morning, you know, that you've made it through another night. With London being so big, you can sometimes hear bombs, the action of war going off, but you can hear it, but because London is so huge, it doesn't affect necessarily your area. Whereas towns, because they were so much smaller than, say, London, if your town was getting bombed, you were getting bombed. There's only one or two sort of mentions of the ration and things like that. It's mostly at the moment military. You can't blame people when that is something so fresh, so new, and it's taking up your entire life and everything, that's what you're going to put into your diary. There's not a lot of personal going in there at the moment, but I do think it is going to get better. It will become more personal as it goes on. Plus, I mean, you know, she's in the Blitz. What else are you going to talk about? Another diary that I have found is the shop assistant in wartime. Humans don't change. The situation that surrounds you does. Humans don't. I'm reading her diary, and it's, having been a shop assistant for quite a few years in my life. Yeah, it rings true. It rings true. So Lord Walton, who was the Minister of Food chap, Lord Walton Pye, who was charged with making sure that everyone had something to eat and all the rest of it. Well, he was the head of Lewis's, and she said apparently when you went to Lewis's, there were no shortages. But you see, you can only make a profit if you've got something to sell. You know how we get a lot of this, the Ministry of Food leaflets and this, that, and you say, oh, well, yes, we're doing it, you know, here's your weekly ration, you are guaranteed that, and then on top of that, you've got your fruit, your veg, your bread, you know, and then countless other items that you can have, whether they've got coupons on or whether they're coupon free. And we're living like that with our ration diets. You know, you can have your seasonal veg and your fruit and you're this, that and the other. And you're not guaranteed your rations. When I was speaking to Gwen, who was a child growing up in London during the war, I was saying, oh well, I'm going on this wartime ration, Gwen. And she was like, well, it's all right if you could get it. She was like, and the sweets were awful, they were boiled, you know, if you could get any. And I'm like, yeah, but the propaganda, the paperwork that we have now that is going to create the past, because you can only work from what you've got to paint a picture. Do you know what I mean? She says, you were guaranteed it. She says, but you weren't. You weren't. And this absolutely tells you, no, you weren't guaranteed. There's a week in here, the only vegetables that they had in the shop to sell was 1 sack of potatoes. 1 sack. There was no tomatoes, there was no peas, there was nothing. You know, and housewives wouldn't believe them when they said, there is nothing to offer you. There's going to be no eggs this week. We cannot offer you your ration of eggs. The shopkeeper was asked to go into the Ministry of Food, because it's like, what's happening with your butter? Because people were having it in dribs and drabs, so they were maybe getting more. The savvy housewives were maybe getting more. But he was one of many shopkeepers that day that had been asked to go in, because your butter's not adding up, you know, and this, that and the other. An egg is 2.5 pence, 2.5D, which I've worked out that 1 old penny is about the equivalent of £1 today. So you'd be paying £2.50 for 1 egg, and that egg would, chances are, be bad. You know, and she didn't feel great about handing them out, but it's all that she had. No biscuits and sweets for anyone today. And also, then what they weren't told, you know, Lord Walton, whoever, would tell the consuming population about what their rations were and what to do and this, that and the other. There was never any communication to the actual shopkeepers as to what they were supposed to be doing. So the only way that this Kathleen Hay, shop assistant, the only way she actually knew what to do in regards to rations and ration books and this, that and the other was to go to the post office and see if they knew. And fortunately, they kind of did, you know. But if you missed it on the wireless, or you missed it in the paper, you didn't have a clue as a shopkeeper. You didn't have a clue. You were relying on the populace to tell you what the game was. Craziness. They had 2 different suppliers for their rationed items, and they had a wholesaler as well. They were released things in little like dribs and drabs, so you'd get a dozen of, say, tins of condensed milk. But when you've got 90 odd families on your books, you can't just say, oh, I've got 12 of that in. So that's where a lot of under the counter comes from. It's like they basically say that Lord Walton makes liars of them all, you know, definitely of shopkeepers. You can see the sort of the headache that these poor people had to deal with running a shop. Coupons, ration, supplies, you know, customers complaining. It's like, yeah. You have, you know, you treat your best customers. Your best customers were people who either spent a lot of money or who, more importantly, didn't cause you aggro, and you would try and see them right, and then all the rest, you just have to deal with them. But also, it looks like soldiers, servicemen, they didn't have to register anywhere. That if they just turned up in your district, they could just go in with their ration books and get what they needed, which would then mean that your regular customers are left short because you have only got in the rations for your actual registered customers. It looks like the registration date for your ration booked was the 1st of August, 1941. That just happened to be a Friday. But I'm going to assume it was the 1st of August as a calendar day, as opposed to the actual date. I haven't worked that out yet. Because it was the first day of the ration and you're trying to sort of put a good front, you know, your best face on, especially for your new registered customers, they were giving them things like fruit salads and, you know, a tin of crackers or something like that, you know, to make them feel good before you can't have anything because there's nothing to give you. You get lots of prices and dates and what was happening and so yeah, all good fun. Less war, more actual food shop, you know, that sort of thing in that one. Vintage knitting. The lady designs in this are okay. The men's are awful. The kids aren't too bad. But yeah, you get a few decent patterns. You can see it. Ooh. Oh, no, I can't hold it very well. It's a hardback, so I can't really bend the pages to show you, but yeah, you know, nice enough. Right, so then that's just a little storybook that I got. It's actually supposed to, I think it's about true lives, true accounts, but again, I've not even been able to pick it up and touch it yet. So I found in a charity shop, I found this book, which is The Art of Needlecraft, and I thought, is it a newer version of this book, you know? But no, actually, it turns out that they are different writers, I think. Yeah, so that's a pattern one, and that one's Polkinghorne. So yeah, they are actually, even though they look incredibly similar, they are completely different books. And when you actually go through the pages, they are. But I think this book is, you know how some books you get and then some books you don't? This one I seem to work better with than this one. So I'm hoping that stuff will go in. And then, whilst I was there at this it's like again, it's an antique shop, local. I found this for learning more about my sewing, especially hand knit sewing, to try and do sort of nice edging and stuff like that. You know, so yeah, I think that's more kind of, I don't know, probably about more 60s or something. And then I found, so do you remember I bought this back in the day? This was from the Oxfam haul, and it's gifts you can make yourself. That way. Gifts you can make yourself, and there's very few duds in here. Really nice gift ideas. And it's a 1946 book from Oddham's. And then I just happened to find these two, which I think it must be a set. So I don't know what else there is out there in this set, but they are all of the same kind of ilk. Same covering, they're all from Oddham's. So I'm going to assume, to make an arse out of you and me, but I'm going to assume that these are 46 as well, because the patterns in here, you've got victory rolls, you've got red lipstick, victory lipstick, and you've got the big power shoulder pads, you know. So we're still looking at wartime. And this one is all about, again, your needlecraft. So your neat edges and all of that jazz. So that'll be an interesting one to read. And you got to think, the ration for clothing was still on up until, is it 48, 49, something like that? So these were made during the ration, clothing ration. I was reading in a book that you were allowed to make dresses out of your blackout material, but the ministry assumed that not many women would. back onto this one. It's separated into 4 autumns. There are not many books that I would recommend that you spend your money on, because I know some people are, you know, a little bit strapped. However, this is one of them. The Practical Family Knitting Illustrated, and it's by Margaret Murray and Jane Coster. So yes, I know that they've done quite a few different editions. There are so few dud patterns in this, and it's a thick enough book. There is plenty of choice. It's worth it. This is worth a purchase. If you can find an edition of Practical Family Knitting Illustrated, it's worth the money. So let's just show you. We've got, it starts in spring and it goes right through to winter. We've got a beautiful little lace jumper there, and there's just a simple top. We've got a nice dress there for somebody. See, we've got a peasant gypsy sort of cardigan there, and then you've got your swimming stuff. From spring to winter, all the way through, the whole family gets catered for. Is there anything else I need to tell you? The garden, putting the garden to bed. That's been another bit that's taking my time. Clearing the garden, putting it to bed. I've got the whole harvest in now. So I've basically picked my the runner beans that I've left on there, and they're drying in my egg tray, and I'm just letting them go, trying to dry them out so I can pod them. But then also I've got loads of apples, so I need to find something to do with them, because I'm really not in the mood for crumbles at the moment. I might do turnovers or baked apples, you know. Ellen, I think you recommended that I do baked apples, didn't you? So yeah, I can have a go at doing that. And then I've got a couple of fleece from the farmer. The farmer's got a sheep, and they've saved the fleece for me. So I've got a couple of bags of these fleeces. So if anybody has ever turned fleece into yarn, please do let me know. If you've got any tips and tricks, much appreciated. But yeah, it's something different. I've never tried it before, so we'll give it a go. Thank you, Primrose. Thank you for that. But yeah, and thank you for you guys sticking in there with me. I know this has been a bit of a long one, but I hope you've enjoyed looking at the books. I hope you've enjoyed looking at some snaps from my holidays and catching up. But yes, let me know how you've been. How you been doing, chaps? Let me know in the comment. I'll be back with you soon. And fingers crossed for tomorrow's results. Bye.